Hey guys, it's Dave Becker here. We're here with at my studio in McHenry, and my brother's here helping me at this time. This is about the fifth live demonstration I've done for you guys. But today is a special one because we're doing a special live video for Dillman's. Dillman's is sponsoring me to do this demonstration, and it's a place that if anybody doesn't know, Dillman's, I'm sure most of you people know that it is who are watching this, that you've probably been to Dillman's, but Dillman's is a place up north, northern Wisconsin, in a little town called Lac du Flambeau, and wonderful place to take a workshop. I teach there twice a year. I teach in the spring and in the fall. I'm teaching there, it looks like June 28th through July 3rd, and I'm doing a watercolor class there in the spring this time. Last year I did a acrylic class there, and we're going to do that in the fall this year. We're going to switch it off. In the fall I'm doing August 30th to September 4th, I'm doing an acrylic class there. And that class in the fall is an acrylic class, and you don't have to bring anything to that class. Holbein supplies everything for us. Holbein is the paints that I use that you'll see today in my demonstration. And if you want to pick up one of these brochures, because there's a lot of great artists out at Dillman's that teach there, and they have brochures online. And the website, Dillmans.com, Dillmans.com is their website. So go there if you want to take and sign up actually for my class. But sign up, and if it doesn't go, you can either get your money back, or you can, in the fall, you can switch over to the fall class. Though it is watercolor and acrylic, so it'll be a little different. But Dillman's also does a lot of these workshops overseas. Probably not right now, but they did one with me to the Greek islands. And the painting I'm doing today will be of the Greek islands that I took there. I took a picture there in the Greek islands, and that's what we're going to be painting today. So let's get started. So I'm going to have my brother here give me my camera, and we'll just set it up real quick. And so let me just set this up real quick. What we're going to do today is, this is a picture that I had taken while I was in the Greek islands. This was Mykonos, one of the stops that the ship made. And it's a scene, no people in there, but I'm going to put some people. I'm going to show you how to put some people into a painting. This looks like a nice stage for somebody, right? So I went online and I looked for some people, and actually I was an illustrator for many, many years. And so I draw a lot of stuff out of my imagination. And so I can do that, but if you need to put people in, look on the line. You can go to a lot of places nowadays on the online websites and stuff that you can pick up scenes of people. And I tell my students to go to where you can pick up royalty-free imagery. And the places that you can go to are unsplash.com, pixelbay.com, and I'll put them in my video. I'll put them down. You can see we can get some brand new royalty-free imagery that you can use. But I just basically took and I did you see the value study here. I put 3 people in there. And kind of a little story here. There's people walking away and a lady selling flowers, or maybe she's just out there. So you can make a story out of your picture. And so what we're going to be doing today too is using Stonehenge aqua paper. That's what I've used lately. I used to use arches a lot, but I've become to really like this paper, the Stonehenge aqua, because it's a little bit tougher paper, and it's a little bit doesn't absorb as much of the paint. So when you're doing painting, the paint sits on top a little bit more on this paper, where arches kind of absorbs in and gives you a softer edge, but I'm getting brighter colors with this paper. Again, Stonehenge aqua, and again I will put it on my website or a live video feed later on in the question area, and I'll put all that information on there. Another thing you can do also is that you can go to my YouTube channel, this video, and I'll probably take some of the stuff, I'll edit out some of the stuff that you about or that I screw up, and so I'll take that out of there when it gets down to the YouTube channel. But you can get it there too, and I will put all these information into the wording underneath the video. So let's get started here, and the paints I'm using, of course, are Holbein. If anybody knows me, I use Holbein paints. I represent Holbein. I love their paints. One reason I like it is because it doesn't dry out. See, you can just go, now my brushes are pretty dirty. So I can just go in here, and these have been dried. I didn't use them, well actually I used it last night, but it's right away, it just comes right back out, and it just instantly rejuvenates. And so to put person into your picture, you have to think of your center of interest. And I also put out a newsletter, and actually this week's newsletter was about an area of interest or a center of interest. A picture has a center of interest, a thing that reason you're painting the picture for most of the time. And it also is part of the first thing you want the viewer to see. And so basically, if you look at this image, if I would leave it out without any people, the center of interest would be pretty much in this area, because you got your brightest brights, lightest lights, darkest darks. And so you're going to look right over here. So then what I did is I put this lady here, and I just, again, made her up. I didn't have a picture for this one. I just made it up. But I made it up into my value study. The value study is where I make things up, and I figure out what's going to be with the lighting. The lighting, this is all in shadow. Here you can see it's in shadow, but this color. So a lot of times when you see color, you kind of think, well, this is white, right? That's the white color, but it really isn't white. It's a gray because it is in the shadow. So that's what the value study is for, so that when you have the value study, you can see that that's a darker value. You don't worry about the color at first. And again, I don't try to, as a teacher, I always tell my students, don't have to copy the photograph to a T when it comes to the color of the objects. Use whatever you want in the color version, your color scheme, and then what you want to do is just look for the value. Look for the value of that. So that's where I'm going to start out. I'm going to leave these things here. You can see them. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get this done, hopefully about 25 minutes or 30 minutes. So let's see if we can do it a little bit quicker this time. I've been doing them in about an hour. I teach a Saturday class every Saturday, and actually I've got I'm doing them online now. And so if you want to follow along on my Facebook page, I just put it down what we're going to be painting on Saturday morning. But you can follow along with me on that stuff if you'd like. So light to darks. Usually watercolors, you do light to dark. And what we're going to start off with, the light is this side of the building. Now if you're keeping the buildings white, then of course you don't do anything, you're done. But I'm going to put a little bit of a wash over that, just a real light, just kind of tapping it to make it look a little bit worn. And actually, could you turn off the heater or the furnace? In my studio here, we don't have any insulation in my studio here. But when the furnace is on, it gets really loud. So we're going to turn that off. Hopefully that didn't interrupt or affect you too much. Just trying to get a little bit quieter in here so you can actually hear me. Using a little bit of this light blue, which is horizon blue, I hope I makes. There's a little bit of white in it. I don't mind using a little bit of white in my pigments, because it does a really great job of making grays. I actually have grays. I have a couple of grays in here too. So I'm just going to go in here and dirty it up a little bit in my white area. Dirty up my white area. That's the light area, so that's going to be it for that. And then I'll just do the details in there. Splatter a little bit. But I must say, when we were in the Greek Islands, these streets, boy, the streets, they paint the street. That little white in there, it's painted on the actual sidewalk. Beautiful country. These islands are just gorgeous. I think Dillman's was going to be taking Bob Burridge, I think, at one place. I'm not sure if they ever did that or if that was canceled. But I know they have, look on their website at dillmans.com. You can see when they're going to the next international water workshop somewhere. I didn't take a look at that before we started here, so you want to take a look yourself, just go to dillmans.com and get all the information. Now I'm going to go right into the background and work my way forward. And since that building is white, I'm just going to leave it white like that. I'm going to go in here and get the sky right away. And I'm using a peacock blue that is a just very vibrant blue that Holbein makes. It was perfect for when we were in the Greek Islands. This color was just like the sky, and the sky there in the Greek Islands was just phenomenal. And blue, very, very blue. I'm going to put a little cloud in there. The cloud, of course, we're going to leave white. You just leave that white right on there. The paper is white. And you'll notice I do have white in my palette, but I don't use it when I don't need to. I kind of use it to enhance parts. And so there, the furnace finally turned off. There we go. So can you hear me now? Thanks. And so here we go. Still getting used to these online videos and stuff, so we're going to get all the kinks out of here sooner or later. We're actually going to be getting 2 cameras, and so I'll be able to talk to you and see the painting at the same time. We'll have a little inset boxes and stuff, so all coming up hopefully pretty soon. I ordered a cam a while ago, and it got caught in shipping coming from China, so it's been a problem, but it's supposed to be coming pretty soon. That's the light is coming forward, and I've got the land back there. It's lighter, and now in the photograph, you notice here in the photograph, it's very dark, right? In my value study, I decided, no, it's not going to be that dark. It's going to be very light, so that you push back there. So there's times you just don't copy the photograph to a T because it's not right when you go to do the painting. You want to make it right, so you have to look at it and go, okay, I want that to push way back. And if I make it that dark as in the photograph, that's too dark. It'll pop forward then, so you're going to keep it back there. And so I'm just going to make it a little bit darker. I can make it warmer if I would like. And that was an orange and blue make a brown. Or this orange makes it green because it's a little bit yellow in there. He's a little green. I'm just going to put a little land back there. And I could take it right into this building because that's in shadow anyways, but because I want that to be a little bit not green, I'm just going to stay away from that building. These are buildings back there, and we're just going to keep it white. Just an impression of buildings back there. Now this whole scene right here is all shadow, right? So basically once I get all my colors that are a little bit lighter than that shadow down, then I'll go in there and do the whole shadow as one. Because the lightest part of that shadow, I will do the whole thing. And come June, when I have my workshop, the way we run our workshops, the way I run my workshop up at Dillman's, is that I usually do something like this with you. We do a painting together. It's a fun place up there at Dillman's. We have a load of fun when I teach up there. Every year too, I learn something new about teaching, or even actually last year we had a very interesting. We had to go outside and paint because there was a big storm that knocked out all the electricity, and so we all went and did some plein air painting. That there's always something fun and happening up at Dillman's when we go up there and teach. I teach there twice only because I had asked them many years ago. I think I've been there about 7 or 8 years. I'm not quite sure how many times I've gone up there and taught. But I couldn't decide on either spring or fall, so I had asked if I could go twice a year, and I would just do a different class, different. And they said it was fine if I can get the students. So sign up, please, and I can get up there twice a year. Now we're putting little shadows. This is just my lights of the color of those objects. And basically my color palette will be kind of blue, and of course the complement of blue is orange, so you're going to get some orange. Blue and orange complement each other really well. And so the sidewalk and the dark browns, those are in the orange tones, so they'll be my orange for the blue. And when it comes to the Greek Islands, boy, when there's a lot of blue, So now I'm going to do the whole shadow over here. I'm going to go do the whole shadow. So I'm going to wet everything down that's in shadow, right to the people. The people here in the background, if you know my value study, they're dark. And so I'm going to keep them go right through them because they're going to be darker on top of my shadow. Now the lady, she's going to be dark on top of things, so I can go through her with the lights, but then I have to watch out because she's going to be dark on top of the light. Just juxtaposition of the values. So now I'm wetting it. You can even wet it with a little bit of a color just so you can see where you're going, because if you just use pure water and you're wetting it, sometimes you don't know what you're putting and what you're wetting down. So you can take any color and just wet it down with the color, a little bit of a tint. I call that a tint. Tinting is when you take a little bit of color with a lot of water. That's a tint. And a wash I call something that, like this is going to be a wash now. So now I go in and I grab a bunch of color. My color I'm going to use for the shadowing. And so I'm going to go in here, and now it's going to look really, really dark because pigment dries 20% lighter once you put it down onto a watercolor paper. It looks really dark, but it's going to dry 20% lighter once that water evaporates, because it's all the only thing they have left is the pigment. So you want to grab enough pigment so that when the water is gone, that you have enough pigment to get the value that you wanted to get to. And so you have to make it pretty much 20% darker than you really want to have it. So this is all in shadow. And I know that looks really dark, but it's a white wall in shadow, so it will dry about 20% lighter and it'll look perfect. At least I hope it will. So we're going right in here. Put some warm colors into the wash. And again, this is all wet, so I'm not getting any hard edges whatsoever. You don't get hard edges when you're doing wet into wet. This Saturday in my class, we're going to be doing wet into wet. We're doing a flower in a wet scene. So again, go to my Facebook page and you'll see the picture we're painting. And if you want to follow along, that's great. If you want to do stuff like this in a workshop, follow me up to Dillman's, because we do these kind of things. And I do the first wash, you do the first wash. I do the second wash, you do the second wash. We go on that, and we do it usually about 4 days. It's a 4-day workshop. And we usually do about, I would say, 8 paintings. Or I should say exercises. We do these exercises, because I call these exercises because we're not doing paintings, we're learning. We're learning how to do things with the watercolor. So they're exercises. There's things that we do and that we learn how to do. But there's and it's for every level. I teach for every level because once we get going, once we get this thing going, some people are better drawers, some people are just very beginning. And so I pick up, once I do this wash, I go to every person in the classroom and I figure out where you're at, and I teach to you and your level. So it's pretty much one-on-one once I get everybody going. Once we start doing the first wash like this, and then I go and watch you. And I make sure that you're at your certain level, and I make sure that I keep my teaching to whatever level that you're at. I learned that it's all while teaching actually at Dillman's. I've learned so many things about teaching when I've been at Dillman's. One of the biggest things I learned when I was at Dillman's, one time, it was called the float your pigment. I had a little problems. It was in the very beginning when I was trying to teach up at Dillman's, and I was new at teaching. It was probably the second year I was teaching, and I was trying to get people to put pigment into the water and let it float, and it just came out of my mouth and said, well, just kind of float the pigment into the water. And once I said that, everybody kind of got it. And so nowadays, that's all I say. Everything's float your pigment. And that's like, you see my newsletters called Float Your Pigment, and all those other things are called Float Your Pigment because of that time in Dillman's. There was one lady there, I forgot her name, but I was talking to her and I said that, and everybody in the class kind of heard it. And from that point on, it was like, okay, that's how you teach. You teach people, watercolors, how to float their pigment. Also, during the workshops at Dillman's, it's not only the workshop, but there's also like 3 other workshops usually going on at the same time. And so it's nice that you can talk to people who are in the other classrooms, and they may be doing an oil painting, or they may be doing another watercolorist, or they may be doing, oh my God, they got so many different kind of classes. It's so wonderful. But you get to meet those people too in those classes, and so it's a whole fun 4 days, actually 5 days, because the dinner is the one night. You get there on the Sunday and they have some great, great food for the Sunday dinner before you get started on Monday morning. So now you see how this is all in shadow. This is all shadowed, and it's almost not quite dark enough because, again, it's going to dry a little bit lighter. So I'm going to go in there right now while it's still wet. As long as it's wet, as long as you can see a sheen, you can put something in there. What you can't do is make your brush wetter than this surface, because watch what happens. If I go like this, it's going to make a watermark, because now it's wet, but this is wetter. And so you're going to make a watermark. That's called a watermark or blossom, or a lot of people call it different things. But what you can do is just take the water and spread it out amongst the puddle, if it does happen to you. So here I'm going to go in, get a little bit darker right in here, a little bit of purple, and you're going to notice I have black and white in my palette. And if you need a really dark, I don't mind you using black in my class, but I usually ask you to add a color to that black, because black by itself, it doesn't, it's kind of boring. So I have people put a color into the black. Now I know this is white paint on the street, but it's in shadow, but if you put it darker, it's okay, because these are going to be darker than that. So once it dries 70% lighter, I'll go back in there and get the bricks that they paint around. And so while I have the same color for the shadowing, I might as well do her shadow on the floor because it's the same color, right? So I'm just going to use the same color on the wall of white, because that's on white also. I mean, they paint everything white, and it's just so beautifully over there. A little shadowing in here. Large areas. Get your large areas done first, your value pattern. Get your big value pattern done first. Then you can go back in later and get your smaller details. And then, of course, your darks will be what creates the shapes of things. Objects will be the darks. Right now, I'm just coloring. A little coloring book. Any good questions, Dirk? Any good questions, you think? Okay, cool. All right, so let me just get this little thing. And also, I have a hair dryer here, but usually they're a little bit too loud, and I don't like using them. But this one's a little bit quieter than the other one I had used the other day. But I'm going to try to not use them just because it's annoying. I know they're very annoying. So we can go right in here. Just make a little bit of mess over here because it's nice to get the texture of the walls that they have there. All right. And also, if it's wet, you can put any color you want in here. If you want to, let's bring it over to like a little bit more of a warm color in here. As long as it's wet and it's floating, you can put whatever color you want in there and just let it settle into the water and just let it bleed down. Now here also, that's a harder edge, and to get a harder edge when you're using wet into wet, you have to use just a little bit more pigment. And don't use any water in your brush. And actually, I'm using this the towel over here, and I can get the water out of my brush, but I can go in here and I can make a harder edge. It's not a hard edge, it's a soft edge that's just slightly harder because I'm using a little bit more pigment. Thicker pigment will make it not bleed so far. It's just obvious that it will not bleed as far because it's more pigment and not that much water. So I'm going to make that a little bit darker in here. There's a little crevice in there. I'm just going to go in there, make that a little bit darker. And it's still floating because there's still a shine there. And so that's cool. I don't have to worry about that. And now there's steps here a little bit darker. And so you can work in a wet area as long as your brush is not wetter than the surface. That's the most important thing about when you're working wet in the wet, is you work with a thick amount of pigment and don't put water in your brush. And if you want to get it out of your brush, just tap it under there and turn your brush over and make the darkness on the other side. So here I'm working in a wet wash. I'm making things darker. I'm getting a soft edge, but I'm making it darker, but I'm making it stop on a line. All right, I'm going to use a smaller brush, and I'll let that dry, and if I get to that point, we can dry with a hairdryer too. The reason I don't like using a hairdryer for most of my paintings, even just in the studio, is that right now the watercolor is working itself smooth. It kind of bleeds and keeps on bleeding, and gives you a nice soft edge, smooth edge. Well, it keeps on doing that until it's dry. So if you take a hairdryer and force that to dry a lot faster, you stop the whole process, and then you're going to get whatever you got there. And a lot of times you'll even get watermarks because you're pushing that water into the dry area and you're forcing it to dry too quick. So a lot of times try not to use the hairdryer if it's not at all possible. It's okay, but just try not to do it as much as you think. So here we're going to go start putting some of our darks in here. Here we're going to go get some darks. And when you start getting your middle tone darks and your darks, you're creating things, an object. It's usually like here, this little railing. I can put that around because it's way in the background. I can just, whoa! So if you do something like that, just take your paper towel. When you're throwing your brushes around, just take a little bit of water and just tap it up this. No big deal. So I just took some of that off of there. People tend to think that watercolor you can't correct your mistakes, but you can totally. You can take this whole area, if I want to rewash it off and stuff and do it again, you can, as long as the next time you go over it, you flood it with a lot of pigment and you float it afterwards. That's what's great about this paper too, because it scrubs off. It's not absorbing into the paper as much as like an Arches would. Because Arches is a softer paper, and so it's going to absorb into the paper a little bit longer or more. And here, this paper is a little bit hot, almost like hot press in a way, where it's a little bit tougher. And I'm not absorbing much into the paper as much. So I think I got my middle tones and my lights, and so now it's, I think, time for my darks. So let's go right into the lady right away, since she's dry. Everything's dry right there. If you got a question, I do have my brother over here. He can read a question if you do have a question. If it's a good question. We'll go through that. And here we're going to just put down a wash. Again, I always like putting down a wash of any color. It doesn't matter what color, as long as there's a little bit of pigment in there, I can see where I'm going. And then let's say I want to paint that red. I just go into red now, and I float some red in there. Like I want to make, maybe I don't want to make it red, maybe I want to make it yellow. So as long as it's wet and you take the pigment and float it into that puddle, you're fine. You'll be doing fine.
What kind of paper are you using?
It's the Stonehenge Aqua. Stonehenge Aqua is made by Legion Papers. It's a new paper. It only came out about 2 years ago, and they now also make a black watercolor paper that they just made. It's also Stonehenge Aqua Black. So Stonehenge Aqua, it comes in 300-pound cold press, hot press. It comes in sheets, and it also comes in pads and blocks, or blocks I should call them. And it rubs out really easy. So let's say I want to rub out like an area, make it light again. It rubs out really nicely.
Name of paper you are painting on?
What's that?
Name of paper you are painting on?
Stonehenge Aqua.
Okay.
Stonehenge Aqua by Legion. So there's like, I changed it, how many times I've changed it already. And as long as you just keep on floating it, you can put whatever, any color you want in there. Let it float together. Too many people tend to use this palette and do the mixing like this, and mix until you get a color. Let the color mix themselves. They'll mix themselves together much better than you can do it. They just see each other and they sit there and look at that. There's a little bit of orange, a little bit of blue, and just put it down and let the pigment just float in the water, and it'll all come together on its own. And it'll be a lot brighter too, a lot more vibrant. That's the best thing about the watercolor, is that so much happens on its own. Like, you let it do its thing. Let the watercolor do its thing. Let it float in the water and make all those little marks, those fun marks that it makes.
So will you do a demo using black paper?
Yeah, I probably should do that. I'm sure Legion will love that. I'll have to do that one day. And once we get the camera going, once we get the two cameras going, it's going to be pretty fun. We've looked at it, and we were going to have it for this demonstration, but I still don't have that webcam that was supposed to be coming in. And you can do it Wi-Fi wise, but Wi-Fi is kind of sketchy here, so I couldn't do that this week. But coming soon, we'll be doing a bunch more demonstrations and stuff.
Do you get mud if you change color too often?
Not if you let it float. Because the color that you're putting on top of the water will kind of supersede what's underneath it. So see, I'm going to put a bright blue there, and that's on top of an orange. The blue will be a little bit brighter, and so it'll go right on top there. And it'll just, it'll be vibrant because you're laying it into the water. Now if I'm rubbing it like I do here, if I rub it back and forth like this, of course it's going to get muddy. Or it's going to get gray. It's going to get really gray and ugly, a color. But sometimes that's a good color too. I've noticed that a lot of people, a lot of artists in these new societies are using a lot of black and dark colors. I just saw Alvaro Castanat. He had been using a lot of black. Andrew Wyeth was probably the first. I looked at his work, and he uses super amounts of black in his work. I remember going to Rockland, Maine, in their gallery up there in Maine. And there was a painting I went in of blueberries, and it was just blue and black, and man, was that cool painting. There, so we got her pretty close. We're just gonna go in there, and so everything by that time, hopefully. And when you're testing your paper, there's a little bit of a bow. You can't see that, but I can see there's a little bit of a bow, so it's a little damp. But as long as it's not wet and I lose the sheen, then I can tell by the back of my hand. Don't use the front because you got oils in the front of your hand, but on the back, just feel it. If it feels damp, just wait a little bit longer until it is kind of bone dry. That way you know for sure that you're not going to get kind of a funky edge on that. So now let's go into our darks and just, and where you work, I usually like working back to front, but that's not to say that it's a definite thing you have to do. You know, you can, let's say I want to do this little guy right in here. I can put that dark in there, looks like a little window or something. Put that in, that's fine. It's not going to hurt it if you do that. And even this dark in here, if I want to work here first before I go back there, it really doesn't matter. Sooner or later it's going to get done anyway, so whatever you feel. And once you get the big wash of shadowing done, now it's just the darks anyway, so pick one. Now pick anyone you want. And so the doors, I love that the doors are there in the Greek island, how they're blue, how blue they are. That's so awesome. Everything about the Greek islands was amazing, the trip. And I think Sue and Denny are the owners. And I'm sure if you've been up there, you know them. But if anybody who's new to Dillman's, Sue and Denny are the owners. And we got Stephanie, who's usually behind the desk, and the children, and Scott and James. They all work at the helpers, and it's a wonderful family-run business.
What time is the floral demo on Saturday?
9:30. If you go to my Facebook page, you'll see there's an event on my Facebook page, and you'll see the photo we're using. And so go to, I think it's BeckerArt on Facebook, and you can get the picture we're going to be painting, and you can just follow along. I don't stop for you guys or answer questions right then when I'm doing it, but you can just always ask me, and I will answer later on after the demo is done. And I will also put it on, again, I'll put it on YouTube. Last week, about 7 people did the painting, and we just had fun. I was just starting to learn how to do this, and so I'll get better and better hopefully as we go along. And since it sounds like it's going to be happening for a while, we'll see how it goes.
One question is, why did you choose Stonehenge aqua paper?
I used to work a lot on Bristol board, which is a hot press paper. It's a board basically. And they came to me, and I was testing, Legion came to me with this paper through Holbein, and they wanted me to try this paper. And ended up that I liked it because it acts a lot like hot press and like Bristol board. And it's like Bristol board with the texture. So that's like and a lot of my in-studio paintings I do are done on Bristol board, and so this is to me like Bristol board with texture. So the question was, somebody asked, what was again the question? Just so that people know.
Why did you
why I use it? Yeah, the reason I like it that much is because it does feel like Bristol board, and it has a texture to it. This is cold press I'm using right now. They do make hot press, but I like a little bit of texture, and I like that it floats on top a little bit. It doesn't absorb into the paper so much, and I can rub out. My students love that too. You gotta get used to it. So if you've been a painter on arches for a long time, which I still paint on arches once in a while, and but if you've been an arches person for so many years, it's tough to change a lot of times. But I changed, and boy, I'm not looking back. I really love this paper. And the same thing with a couple of my students who really love the paper. And so now, see, I'm just getting darker and darker as I go along. And now I'm going to try to get in the background here. And it's kind of funny because usually I work within a time limit. At the festivals, usually we have an hour, and but not having somebody say, "Hey, you gotta get done in an hour," is kind of interesting because I'm milking this, I think. Normally I try to get it all done in about an hour when we do the festivals. Dillman's usually does a festival up in Hopkins, Minnesota, and we've done them down in Florida. This year I did one in Dunedin, or not Dunedin, it was the Villages. We did one, and so we've been doing these festivals for Dillman's all around the country, actually. In Florida and back up north, and in Chicago here. I was going to do one here again in my studio here in McHenry. They be canceled, but maybe next year we'll do it again. When this pandemic is over, we'll go right back into doing the festivals again. And actually, this is a festival right now, so this is what I do at the festival. I painting like this. But there I usually get an hour. Well, how much time do you still have? Oh, I got 20 minutes. Uh-oh, I better hurry up. Usually I have a class here on Saturday mornings, and that's how come I'm doing the Saturday morning paint-alongs with the webcam. Uh-oh. What's going on here? Am I getting... maybe that's just on that TV. Can somebody... that blurred image? My camera looks like it's not blurred. Any shadows? A bit darker shadows. Anybody's monitor go blurry? My camera still looks like it's doing fine, but I'm not sure. My monitor here has gotten real blurry.
So it's back again.
Back again? Okay, good.
They're saying they got it blurred too.
Maybe it's my Wi-Fi. Maybe it's the Wi-Fi here. So Tom had done this demonstration. Tom Lynch had done a demonstration for Dillman's last week, and I think they got another one coming up. Go to Dillmans.com again, look them up, and they'll tell you all the demonstrations that are coming up. Doing them on Wednesdays, I think. Wednesdays at 3. Tom did his on YouTube. There's also other teachers. Dale Popovich, who also teaches up at Dillman's, will be. He does on Saturday noontime. He always does a kind of a little paint along also. If you want to follow Dale, that's cool. I watched his demo, and actually his demo kind of at the end, kind of same thing. It froze. Something froze on him, but so that's part of the thing, I guess. When you're working online, you never know. Something happens, and sometimes there's nothing you can do. So I'm still not quite sure what she's carrying here. Maybe some flowers, some red flowers. Again, those places where you can get imagery, it's royalty-free imagery. There's 3 places I go to a lot of times for my students if they want to find some imagery because they're stuck inside right now and you can't go out and take pictures. You can go and these are royalty free, and the photographers let you use their imagery. And the places are called unsplash.com, Pixabay. Unsplash is UNSPLASH, and Pixabay, PIXABAY.com. And Pexels, PEXELS.com. Those are places that, and so if you don't know what to paint and you need some nice photographer's pictures that allow you to use them, they're royalty free. You can thank them too when you download them. You can thank them and put them on Facebook to show photographers some thanks. Now we're getting into the nitty gritty here, so let's get some. This is dry now, so I waited long enough. And now I'll get my darks in there. The dark, I have this brown over here, is called, is this the brown? No, that's the imidazolone brown. Okay, try to say that 3 times. Imidazolone brown, it's kind of a purpley brown. And so I'm for the stones and back here, I'm just going to kind of put them in. Quickly turn in. Again, dark, and again now, because before that looked kind of dark, but now it becomes a lot lighter because I'm putting it darker on top of it. So the value all of a sudden changes to a lot lighter. And once I put water down, that doesn't mean I'm just going to leave the exact one color. See how I'm bringing up some other colors and dropping it into that puddle of water.
Is the picture from France?
No, this is Mykonos in the Greek islands. It's the Greek islands. This is where the workshop was that Sue and Denny and myself and Dillman had done this workshop about 3 years ago, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. And it was my favorite of all the islands in the Greek islands. The Mykonos was the one with the windmills. And just beautiful, beautiful island.
Someone said Mykonos, Greece?
Greece, yeah, in Greece. The Greek islands. Now these people are going to be dark, but that's still wet, so I gotta wait until that dries so I can get. Now this whole staircase is a little bit darker, right? And so now that it's dry, I can get hard edges. So you always have to wait for your paper to dry to get the hard edges, and then you can go in. Darks in here. And so while that's drying, and again, if you see that's kind of boring, it's just one flat solid color. As long as it's wet, you can put other colors in there, drop them in right into the water, and let them mix themselves together. It'll look smooth, and it'll just have a couple of different colors from everywhere else in here. You can put a little blue in there because it's going to reflect. The sky is going to reflect in there, depending on if it's shiny. So I'm putting I've got red, I've got orange, I got blue in there, I've got everything in there, and grays. You can use whatever color you want in there. And that's called floating your pigment, because you're floating it into a puddle of water. Now we're going to get a little bit of details going on in here. Details are the dark details, the really fine stuff. Like this is a little vase here, or no, potted plant. Sitting on top of this little wall here. I don't have that in my value study so much. I just pretty much have the plant, but I decided as I'm drawing it that I wanted to do that. You know, you're an artist. You don't need to follow the photograph to a T. You can do and change things as you go along too. As long as you keep the main general values, your value study, you'll be fine. You can change little things. It's not going to make that much of a difference for the overall part of the whole painting. Down here a little bit. Trying to keep it under an hour. Still have 15 minutes. Working as an illustrator my whole life, times were always a big thing. You know, you have to get it done by this time, you have to get it by that time. And so that's how I learned how to be able to work in a time limit. I mean, if there was a meeting, and I used to do storyboards for TV commercials, and so I would, if it had to be done by noon for a meeting at 1, you better get it done. And so that's the way I learned how to paint too. Is like if it's a certain amount of time I've got to do, I'm going to get it done by that time. So I usually like to give myself a little bit of time limit. When I'm in the studio painting on my own, then I don't have a time limit. I just go and have fun. But it's a demonstration, and you want to see something, and I'm trying to teach you something here. So I want to, don't want you to get bored. So I didn't use any masking fluid on this one because I couldn't paint around everything on this one, so that was not too bad. A lot of times I'll use masking fluid. I have Holbein has some masking fluid, and they have a masking fluid pen, which has a metal tip on it, which is really great because you can write with it. And a lot of these you can get Vermont Art Supply. Right now they have a lot of Holbein stuff. Let's see, now let's go into our, get a little plant over here. I don't have much green on my palette, as you'll notice, but I have quinacridone gold. So with the gold and the blues, I can make some really nice greens. Quinacridone gold, and any of the blues, this is quinacridone gold, or Q gold, like we like to call it, Q gold. You put that with your blues, and you can make some great green colors.
Will you be putting this video on YouTube channel?
Yes. Yes, I will be. I'll be putting this on. Somebody asked if I'm going to be putting it on YouTube. Yes, I will be putting it on YouTube. I may edit out some of the things that are stupid or I didn't think needed to be said, or but I'll and yes, it will be definitely be on YouTube. Not right after this thing, but later on down the road, it will be on there. You can go back over, and if you want to try it, give it a try, that's fine. This one's my photograph, and so I give you the right. Go ahead and have fun with it. That's what I do in my studio, in my classes at Dillman's. I bring all the supplies, for the acrylic class I do, but I bring all the imagery, all the photos that we work on together. And we also have a bunch of exercises where you don't use photographs. And this Saturday when I'm doing that, the demonstration, I'm going to be doing it on plexiglass with a sheet of paper, a real thin sheet of paper. And so a lot of times I also bring the paper and stuff to the classes that you can try out by Legion. So I work with Legion and I work with Holbein, and sometimes they give me stuff to come and bring to the classes up at Dillman's. And so we work together on this stuff. The neat thing about I just started the acrylic class up there at Dillman's last year, and at first it was hard to get people to go, but once we got it going, people loved it. They absolutely loved it because you didn't have to bring any materials whatsoever. My acrylic class, you don't have to bring any materials whatsoever. It's all supplied. I supply it all, and there's 4 different kinds of acrylics that you're going to be using in the fall. You use fluid, ink, heavy-bodied, and acrylic gouache. In the acrylic class, and we learn how to do it like a watercolor too, and acrylic, so you get a little bit of both in that class. But my spring class up at Dillman's, which is again June 28th to the 3rd, that will be all watercolor, and we'll be doing it on. I'll bring some Stonehenge. I'm going to let you definitely try some Stonehenge. We're going to be doing it on some real thin paper. We do all kinds of different things, and you don't have to worry about bringing stuff for that. When I do certain things that I know are hard for you to bring, I bring it then.
Do you ever use a mall stick to avoid your hand resting on wet areas?
No, that's probably a good idea, huh? I've never done it with watercolor. I usually use them as my pinky, and I put it in there, but you'll get a little dots. Actually, my finger's kind of dirty right there because I'm always using my pinky to steady my hand and stuff. And if it's a dry area, it doesn't matter, but just make sure your pinky is not going into a wet area and then into a dry area. When I do my demonstrations, a lot of times I do them upright, like for the class, because that way you can see them straight on. And so I learned how to do that through Robert Wade. I had taken Robert Wade's workshop in Rockland, Maine, and I saw how he was doing it, and I thought that was the coolest thing, that you can paint upright a watercolor. So I've learned how to do that. You don't have the student have to do that, but I do that just because that way you can see it. And there I probably think that would be a good place to use a maul stick. I'm getting close. I'll put a couple more things in here. This one is dark in there. In the eaves of these things, a lot of times it's good to put, I learned this through Irving Shapiro, to put a little orange up in the eaves. Now here was a dark blue, and I put an orange on top of that. And as long as you float it, it doesn't matter. You could put the orange on top of a dark. You can put a light on top of a dark. That's always a no-no. It was a no-no in school, even to use white. But if you put water down and float the pigment on top of a dark color, let's say this orange, on top of a light color, it's going to settle on top and it's just going to float there. And once it dries, it'll look just as fresh as if you did it from the get-go. It's how you apply it. And if I'm really tough with it and I sit there and I make it really too thick and it's not floating, it's all the floating. You got to let it float. If it's floating in the water on its own, it will be a very vibrant color and it'll look very fresh. Because you didn't make it thick, and a thick watercolor doesn't look fresh at all. Like that's gouache, that's called gouache. Because I have colors like this violet, I've got these pinks that are very, very opaque colors, but because I'm dropping them into a wet wash, they'll be fine. They're very transparent. So I'm going to do that right now to show you. So let's say I want to bring a little bit of pink or purple in there. These are very pink and purple colors. And so I'll wet the area first with a little bit of this color. This is very pastel colors. But because I put down the water, look at this pink. That pink is like white pink. White with pink in it, see? And as long as I float it, it's not going to be thick. It's not gouache because it's floating and it's transparent. I can see through it. But there's enough pigment that it's going to give me that color, that pastel-y color. And that's fun. You know, why shouldn't us watercolors be able to use pastel colors like the pinks and the purples and the lavenders and the lilacs? They're great colors.
Question, are you painting flat for the camera or do you usually paint inclined?
I usually just paint flat with a little bit of an incline like this. Actually, I'll put some of this tape underneath here. So a little bit so it runs down a little bit. But for this show, I just made it flat so you can see the camera straight down on it. Little shadows across here. And now I've noticed that this area seems should be a little bit darker. So I saw this ad the other day of a airbrush for makeup. And I actually ordered it, and it ended up being a bad thing to do because it's a subscription. But I wanted the airbrush to do an airbrush, like take something all across it. And I noticed that Tom in last week's demonstration also used one of these misters. It's water. See, it's like a mist, and he put color in there. And actually, he used it like almost like an airbrush. And I'm going to try that. Not in this demonstration, but I'm going to try that hopefully in another demonstration soon. And I actually even ordered an actual airbrush to see using an airbrush to put some of the really fine details, not details, but the nice fine edges into your work. Yeah, look at this, is like vibrant, opaque color, but because I'm putting it down with water and then putting a little bit more water down. So you can go right over something, and as long as you just let it float, you're fine. All right, there's not too much more here. Hold on. Look at it myself through the... A little bit more here, a little darker in the shadow. And then just a little bit in this brickwork back here, and I think we'll be good. So we got a little bit of work here. And actually, it's gonna be 5 minutes and it'll be 1 hour. Like I always say, I can actually time it down to the minute.
Somebody asked they're looking for the photo reference for Saturday class.
It's at BeckerArt. BeckerArt is my other page on Facebook. It's BeckerArt. I think it's BeckerArt LLC or BeckerArt. Type that into, or go to my regular website that you're on right now. Or not website, but my Facebook page. And there's a BeckerArt page. And on that page you can find, I just posted an event for this Saturday. I posted an event for this Saturday's painting, and it's on there. It's a flower. It's a red flower. And also all these demonstrations I've been doing. I've been taking and doing the demonstrations, and I've been putting them online because all of the artists are having a little bit of a tough time now that all our work is gone. So I am selling all these paintings, and actually at a very good price. You can go on my website in the gallery section. They're all for sale. The poor artists like myself who are we just basically got all our work cut out from underneath us. I had 3 workshops just go away in a day. It was like, oh no. But it's actually pretty good. I'm going to be going, and I'm doing a lot of work for a company, painting for a company in Dallas, a gallery, and so we're going to have fun painting. Do what artists are supposed to be doing, painting, right? But this will be for sale too. I'm putting up a painting a day lately. My daily paintings I put up, and then I put them on my website, and you can order them. So support your local artists. They're all probably struggling now, especially the ones that teach a lot. And all right, hold on, let me look at it from a distance here.
People are saying if they're going in focus on image streaming. I think it's just a streaming issue right now.
All right, well then, let's just call it quits here, because I think we're pretty much done. Let me just take off the tape. And again, look up Dillmans.com and look at all their beautiful workshops they got coming up with some of the greatest artist teachers that they have coming all the way from Australia and all the way from, they have artists from everywhere coming to teach at Dillmans, and it's a fun week there. Fun 4 days, 5 days. Some of the workshops are 5 days, some of them are 4 days, but just look them up on Dillmans.com. You can download the PDF brochure that they have up there, and look through and sign up for it online. You can sign up for mine. It's again in June, and if it does get canceled, don't worry about it, because they'll refund you if it, for the reason of the pandemic. Just let them, they'll refund your money if you do sign up. So I guess that's it. Any more questions, just put them up on my Facebook page, and I will get back to them. Sooner or later, I will get back to them. But thanks a lot for watching, guys. I think that's pretty much it. Let me get this down here. And there you go. Thanks a lot. Stay safe, guys. Bye-bye.